There's a black and white photograph from the 1940s of a woman leaning against a Harley Davidson. She's dressed head to toe in matching blue and white, boots polished, hair tucked under a cap, and she's grinning like she owns every mile of road behind her. And honestly, for a while she kind of did. The story goes that she'd roll into small-town racing contests dressed as a man, beat every rider on the field, and only pull off her helmet at the finish line, right as the officials realized they'd just been smoked by a black woman and decided, funny enough, that she wouldn't be collecting that prize money after all. She crossed a segregated America on 2 wheels, alone, 8 separate times. She carried the Army's documents from base to base during a world war. And then, outside of Miami and a few motorcycle circles, mainstream history mostly forgot she ever existed. This is the story of Bessie Stringfield. Now, to understand how somebody this remarkable slipped out of the story for so long, we have to go back to the very beginning. And here's the first twist, one that tells you everything about the woman we're dealing with. Even Bessie couldn't keep her own beginning straight. For most of her life, Bessie told people she was born in Kingston, Jamaica, in the year 1911, the daughter of a black Jamaican father and a white Dutch mother. She said her family sailed to Boston when she was small, that both of her parents died by the time she was 5 years old, and that a wealthy Irish woman took her in and raised her in a big house up in Massachusetts, gave her anything she asked for, as long as she prayed to the man upstairs for it first. It's a beautiful story, cinematic even. There's just one small problem with it. The public records tell a completely different one. According to birth and census records, she wasn't born in Jamaica at all. She was born Betsy Beatrice White in Edenton, North Carolina, to a mother named Maggie Cherry and a father named James White, not the Caribbean, the American South. And years later, her own niece, a woman named Esther Bennett, sat down with the New York Times and said it plainly. Bessie had made the whole Jamaica story up. So the obvious question is, why? Why would a woman with a life this genuinely incredible feel the need to invent a fancier origin for it? Hold on to that question, because it turns out to be the key to understanding her. The woman who wrote Bessie's authorized biography, a journalist named Anne Farrar, actually helped pass along some of these invented stories. And when people later asked her why, she said Bessie had asked her as a friend to tell her truth, not the truth on the birth certificate, her truth. And Farrar's point was simple. Whatever Bessie was running from in that early past, it doesn't take a single thing away from what she actually did with the rest of her life. So keep the mystery in your back pocket. We'll come back to it. What we do know for sure is this. Somewhere in her teenage years, Bessie fell in love with motorcycles. And at 16 years old, she got her first one, a 1928 Indian Scout. Nobody taught her to ride it. There was no instructor, no older brother, no boyfriend showing her the ropes. She just climbed on and figured it out herself. She'd later say that good girls weren't supposed to ride motorcycles back then. She wanted one anyway, so she got one. And once Bessie discovered she could ride, staying in one place was never really going to be an option. By 1930, at just 19 years old, she did something that, for a black woman in America at that moment in history, was almost unthinkable. She got on her motorcycle, completely alone, and pointed it at the horizon. The way she told it, she'd spread a big map out on the floor, close her eyes, and toss a penny down onto it. And wherever that penny landed, that's where she rode next. She called them her penny tours. Over the 1930s and 40s, Bessie crossed the entire United States solo 8 times, coast to coast, on roads that were half dirt, on a motorcycle with none of the comforts we'd expect today, with no phone, no backup, and no safety net of any kind. She became the first black woman known to ride solo across America. And I really need you to sit with what that actually meant back then, because it's easy to breeze past it. This was not a fun little road trip. This was a black woman by herself riding straight through the Jim Crow South, through small towns that were known openly for racial violence, through counties where the color of her skin could get her beaten or killed, and where a woman traveling alone on a loud machine drew every eye on the street. There were entire regions of her own country where Bessie simply was not safe, and she rode through all of them anyway. Hotels wouldn't rent her a room. Restaurants wouldn't serve her a plate of food. This was the era of the Green Book, when black travelers had to carry a guide just to find the handful of places that would let them exist for the night. And when Bessie found herself somewhere with no safe place to sleep at all, she improvised. She'd ride up to a filling station after dark, park the bike, lay herself across the seat and the handlebars with a blanket, and sleep right there on the motorcycle until sunrise. In her own words, if she found black folks along the way, she'd stay with them. And if she didn't, she slept on her bike at the gas station. That was the deal she made with the open road, and she took it 8 times. So how does a young woman in the middle of the Great Depression actually pay for a life like this? Simple. She performed for it. Bessie funded her travels by doing motorcycle stunts at carnivals and fairs, the kind of traveling shows that rolled through American towns back then. Crowds would gather, money would change hands, and Bessie would give them something they'd never seen. Her signature move was to stand straight up on the foot pegs while the bike was rolling, arms out, riding like she was walking on air across the fairground. And then there was the Wall of Death. If you've never seen one of these, picture a giant wooden barrel, tall as a 2-story house, open at the top. A rider goes screaming around the inside of it, horizontal to the ground, gravity be damned, moving so fast that the wall itself is the only thing holding them up. Spectators would crowd the railing up top and lean over, holding their breath, watching this rider defy physics a few feet below their shoes. By her own telling, Bessie rode the Wall of Death on a Harley Davidson. For money, for fun, because apparently regular riding wasn't quite enough. And all of this finally brings us back to that story from the very beginning. The one about the races. The way it's been passed down, Bessie would enter local flat track racing contests dressed in men's clothes, hiding the fact that she was a woman entirely. She'd line up with the men, she'd race, and she'd win. And then, at the finish, she'd pull off her helmet, and the officials, suddenly realizing they'd just been beaten by a woman, a black woman, would refuse to hand over the prize money she had flat out earned. Now, I want to be straight with you here because this channel doesn't do the thing where we dress up a legend and sell it to you as a documented fact. This particular part of Bessie's story mostly comes from Bessie herself and from the people who knew her and passed it along. There's no big archive of race results out there with her name on it, so take the specifics as folklore, not gospel. But here's the thing worth sitting with. Everyone who actually watched this woman ride was convinced she could outride any man alive. And when you look at literally everything else she pulled off, the idea that she was quietly beating men and getting cheated out of the winnings isn't exactly a stretch. It fits her perfectly. But the single most incredible chapter of Bessie's life might be the one that actually is stamped into the official record. When the Second World War broke out, the United States Army had a problem to solve. They needed riders, people who could carry documents and messages between military bases quickly, across huge distances, on motorcycles. And as the story has been passed down, Bessie Stringfield signed up as a civilian dispatch rider for the Army, carrying paperwork between bases here at home as the only woman in her unit. The training was no joke. These riders were taught to handle absolutely anything the road threw at them, including building makeshift bridges out of rope and tree limbs just to get their motorcycles across swamps and rivers. Bessie learned all of it. Then she strapped a military crest onto her own blue Harley Davidson and spent 4 years crisscrossing the country, carrying the Army's paperwork from base to base, a lone black woman in an Army rider's role that almost nobody could picture a woman doing at all. But here's the brutal part. The uniform and the crest did not protect her from the country she was riding through. On one of those wartime runs, a man in a pickup truck spotted her out on the road, a black woman alone on a motorcycle, and decided he didn't like what he saw, so he followed her. And then he deliberately swerved and ran her clean off the road. And Bessie? She picked herself up, she picked her bike up, and she kept going. Because that's the thing you have to understand about her. When she looked back on the racism, the danger, the time she was knocked down or run off the road, she didn't describe them as trauma or as a crusade. She described them almost casually as just the ups and downs. She wasn't waving a flag, she was just being Bessie, and being Bessie meant you did not stop riding for anyone. If you're as hooked on this woman as I am right now, do me one quick favor and hit that subscribe button. We dig up forgotten legends exactly like Bessie every single week, and you're gonna wanna be here for the next one. All right, back to the road, because after the war, Bessie finally found a city to call home. By the late 1940s and into the 1950s, Bessie had made South Florida her home, although settled down is being generous, because she absolutely kept riding. And somewhere along the way, she ran headfirst into a problem, and that problem was the Miami police. She kept getting pulled over, hassled, followed, and eventually she was told, flat out, that black women were not allowed to ride motorcycles in that city. Now, plenty of people would have quietly parked the bike and kept their heads down. But the way Bessie always told it, she went the other direction entirely. She marched down to the police station and demanded to see the captain himself. The captain, probably expecting to put this woman in her place, took her out to a local park instead and told her to prove she could actually handle the machine. So he ran her through a gauntlet, tight figure eights, slow speed control tricks, the whole works, the kind of stuff that separates a real rider from a poser. And Bessie put on an absolute clinic. By the end of it, the captain reportedly admitted he had never in his life seen anyone, man or woman, ride a motorcycle the way she just had. She got her license that day. And the harassment stopped. Picture that for a second. A black woman in 1950s Miami told she's not allowed to ride, who responds by outriding the entire police department in a public park until they have no choice but to respect her. That's the whole woman in one story. The local papers started calling her the Negro Motorcycle Queen, and over time that hardened into the title that would follow her for the rest of her life. The Motorcycle Queen of Miami, and she earned every syllable of it. She founded her own motorcycle club in the city, the Iron Horse Motorcycle Club. She led its annual motorcycle parade straight through town, out front, usually the only woman in the pack and often the only black rider, sometimes with her little dogs perched right on the bike riding along with her. She worked as a domestic at first, then trained and became a certified nursing assistant, which meant she spent her days caring for people and her free time terrorizing the local speed limit. A Miami Herald reporter who profiled her in the early 1980s remembered being completely in awe of this beautiful black woman with big bushy hair tucked under a helmet, way out front of a parade full of men, looking sharp, breaking every expectation anyone had. Her personal life was every bit as full as her riding life and just as complicated. Bessie married and divorced 6 different times over the years. She kept the last name of her third husband, a man named Arthur Stringfield. And the reason she gave for keeping it is honestly the most Bessie thing imaginable. She said he asked her to hold on to his name because she was the one who'd made it famous. But there's a much harder truth underneath all of it. With her first husband, Bessie lost 3 babies. And she never went on to have children of her own. so she poured that love somewhere else, into her 27 Harley Davidsons, into her dogs, into her church, her nursing, and the endless ribbon of American highway that had been her real home since she was 19 years old. On the subject of those motorcycles, by the way, she never wavered. Her line was simple. To her, a Harley was the only motorcycle ever made. So let's take stock of who we're actually talking about here. The first black woman to ride solo across America, a woman who served her country as an army dispatch rider through a world war, someone who could outride police captains and, by every account, outrace grown men. A club founder, a parade leader, a genuine local legend in a major American city. So why, for the longest time, had almost nobody outside of Miami ever heard her name? Because history, for decades, simply had nowhere to put her. Think about it. The motorcycle history books of the day were about white men on Harleys, and Bessie did not fit that picture. But she didn't fit neatly into the mainstream civil rights story either, and there's a specific reason for that. As her biographer pointed out, Bessie was doing all of this before what most Americans even think of as the modern civil rights movement had really begun. She was too early. She was too different. A black woman tearing across the country on a Harley in 1930 didn't slot into anybody's tidy version of history, so she fell straight through the gap between two stories, and there she stayed. Forgotten. For a very long time, and she might have stayed forgotten forever, if not for one chance meeting in the year 1990. That year, the American Motorcyclist Association put together its very first exhibit celebrating women in motorcycling, and Bessie, by then 79 years old, was invited to be part of it. Standing in that exhibit was a young journalist and rider named Anne Farrar, who had only recently gotten into motorcycles herself. The two women met right there, and despite the decades and the completely different lives between them, they became genuine friends. Before long, Bessie asked Anne to do something important, to write her story down before it was gone. So over what turned out to be the final 3 years of Bessie's life, Farrar sat with her again and again and recorded their conversations. She captured the stories, the memories, the voice, all of it, right at the last possible moment before it would have vanished for good. Because by that point, Bessie's body was giving out on her. Doctors had discovered that her heart was enlarged, something like 3 times the size it was supposed to be, and they told her plainly that she needed to stop riding motorcycles. Her response to that has become the single most famous thing she ever said. She told them that if she didn't ride, she wouldn't live long, and so she never did quit. She was still riding in 1993 when that oversized heart of hers finally gave out. She was 82 years old and she died in Opelika, Florida, having kept her promise to herself right up to the end. And honestly, that enlarged heart is almost too perfect a detail. It's hard to imagine a better metaphor for the woman it belonged to. A heart 3 sizes too big, that refused, absolutely refused, to be told to slow down. And then, slowly but surely, the world finally started catching up to Bessie Stringfield. In the year 2000, the American Motorcyclist Association created the Bessie Stringfield Award, given out to women who lead and break barriers in the world of motorcycling. Her name, attached forever to the exact kind of courage she'd spent her whole life demonstrating. 2 years later, in 2002, nearly a decade after her death, Bessie was inducted into the Motorcycle Hall of Fame. And then, in 2018, the New York Times did something that says everything. They published her obituary, 25 years late. It ran as part of a series the paper called Overlooked, which they'd created for one specific reason, to finally write the obituaries of remarkable people, mostly women and people of color, that the paper had completely ignored the first time around. Bessie Stringfield had been overlooked by the paper of record for a quarter of a century, and now, at last, she had her page in it. Since then, she's turned up in an HBO series paying homage to her, in short films, and in a full documentary about her life that premiered in 2024 and won a jury award. The woman that history worked so hard to forget has become finally completely impossible to forget. So let's come back to that question from the very beginning, the one I told you to keep in your back pocket. Why did she make up the Jamaica story? The mixed-race parents, the wealthy Irish mother, the whole invented childhood? Because here's what gets me about Bessie Stringfield. She never needed to invent a single mile of the part that mattered. She really did ride solo across a country that wanted her gone 8 times. She really did carry the Army's documents through a world war as the only woman in her unit. She really did stare down a police captain and a man in a pickup truck and a doctor holding her own failing heart in his hands and telling her to quit. And she outrode all of them. So maybe that made-up backstory wasn't a lie so much as it was Bessie doing the exact same thing she did with everything else in her life. Taking a beginning she never got to choose, and quietly rewriting it into one she did. On her own terms, at full throttle, right up to the end. She once summed herself up better than anyone else ever could. Looking back on the whole wild ride, she said, "I was something. What I did was fun, and I loved it." She sure was. If you made it all the way to the end of this one, then you love a good forgotten legend just as much as we do, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button and stick around. Because trust me, there are a whole lot more stories like Bessie's out there, buried and waiting, and they all deserve to get dug back up. Thanks for riding along, and we'll see you on the next one.